Hi, everyone. It's another time for a San Diego Family Mediation podcast. I'm Rachel. This is Amanda. That's
Hi.
Jen. And we are all here today. We are going to talk about saving your second marriage.
Or third.
Or fourth. So multiple marriages are a common occurrence. And it just kind of goes along with divorce. You get divorced and time goes by, and then you find someone else you want to be with, and then you get married again. And it can be a really intimidating thing because you've already gone through a divorce, and there's always that kind of cloud hanging over your head. Like, okay, I don't want this to happen again. How do I not have it happen again? And so I started thinking, I had a discussion yesterday about why second marriages and third marriages have higher divorce rates. So, Amanda, do you want to talk about, I guess, the divorce rates of second and third marriages?
Yeah. There's always a lot of talk about like divorce rate in general. I feel like people find out what we do and they're always like, oh, what's the divorce rate this year? You know, these days. And I always say it really does depend because there's so many factors as to like, are you looking at what age you get married? And then of course, like what number marriage it is. And so second, third, fourth, fifth, I don't think we have to go too much beyond that. Marriages have a higher rate of divorce, and there's kind of a number of reasons with that. Talked about the idea that you're blending families at that point. So you're not just you and the other person, but a lot of times you've got kids, whether they're younger or grown, to kind of contend with as well.
Right. And it's, you know, I've heard from a lot of people who have dated people who have kids from a prior marriage, and having, especially whenever their divorce was not amicable and it was very high conflict, it carries over post-divorce. And so there's all this conflict that affects, you know, subsequent relationships. And, you know.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, you're not just dating or married to your spouse. You also have their ex in the picture.
And you may have an ex in the picture.
Yeah.
So now you've got two exes in the picture.
Yep. And so they are certainly, you know, involved, and you sometimes can or might not get along with them.
Right. And so that's something that that comes up, and people only think that you need to go to a mediator for court paperwork. But something that we do here is called is blended family mediation. Jen, would you like to talk a little bit about blended family mediation, what that looks like?
Yeah, we actually stumbled across doing blended family mediation when we had a couple call and just say, hey, you know, we are having this problem. Do you guys do this? And we're like, sure. And so it ended up taking form of having, you know, new wife, new husband, old wife, old husband, and then two mediators. And we're really just focusing on trying to see what are the problems, you know, where are the miscommunications happening? How can they get better? And what are the things that are really hurting the other people? For instance, one of them, you know, one of the moms was very upset that the new stepdaughter, or her daughter, was calling the new stepmom mom. And, you know, and it's just things like that, you know, you're not going to talk about it and say, hey, I really don't want her calling you that. Instead, it just comes out in anger and frustration and everything else. But when we first started, the two men absolutely hated each other. And by the end, they wanted to go out and have a beer together. They were like perfectly happy and, you know, had kind of resolved a lot of their issues. So, I mean, I think most of the time, all the parents involved do care about what happens to the children and the family life they're providing for the children. They just, as adults, sometimes don't know how to play nice.
Yeah. And oftentimes there's no communication.
Yeah.
So there's been these like big misunderstandings. Or
like the one that we did. That we're all adults. There was no children involved.
Yes. Yeah.
Brothers and sisters that had huge miscommunications.
Yeah.
Which was amazing because by the end they were all hugging and happy, and there was some crazy stuff talked about in front of their mother. And
well, sometimes I just think they're not supposed to like the other person. Right? Like you think you're supposed to hate your spouse's ex or whatever. And whether you know them or not.
Well, also I mean, I think part of it is too, number one, you're hearing all the worst characteristics of that other person.
Yeah.
And when you're going through a very stressful time, like a divorce, people are not on their best behavior. And so that sometimes they hear the very worst.
Absolutely.
And of course, but you know, that person is way more than just that little snapshot.
Absolutely.
And I think once they kind of learn that, they're like, oh, this person isn't this evil person I've kind of built up in my head.
Yeah.
They're a normal person that we're just going through a really tough time.
Most of the time. Or sometimes they are that evil person and you're like, God damn.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, there's always exceptions.
Always exceptions.
Well, and learning that you don't have to be best friends with that person.
Yeah.
But they're part of your child's or children's life now.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's really the people that end up suffering are the kids when they see, you know, mom and stepmom fighting, or they see, you know, dad and stepdad, or however it is, because they just realize they have more parents, and a lot of times to them that's all it is.
Right. And then I feel like what happens a lot of time too is things get kind of passed down, like almost like the game of telephone.
Oh yeah.
Where it gets said to the one spouse, and then that spouse talks to their, you know, new spouse. And, but it's like this weird kind of mutated version of what was actually said,
because we all know the telephone doesn't work.
Right. Exactly. And then you get a completely different meaning. And so sometimes just coming in and talking directly to people, you know, and putting some things out there that you might just have not interpreted, or maybe it was just communicated improperly, or,
and that's almost always the case.
Right.
It's just, you know, not being able to see past your own problems and your own issues to see who's really standing there. Like, you're projecting all sorts of stuff onto this person that may or may not even be there.
Right.
Right. Well, and it's, you know, when you talk about, like, I think a big one is what people call your new spouse, like a stepmom or a stepdad, and what they call them is important, because, you know, can only imagine as a mom, you don't want somebody else being called mom, but the kids, that's what they might feel comfortable with. You know, I was talking with a couple, and, you know, they call as mom and mommy, like, it was very similar because that's what they wanted. They were like, we don't want to call stepmom, like, that's weird. You know, she's a big part of our life, just like, you know, mom is. And so, you know, a lot of times, I mean, kids aren't doing it to be malicious, and it's letting them call them what they want to call them.
Right.
And I think that's what we ended up actually coming up with in that case, was that we were leaving it up to the children. You know, let's not encourage this or that. Let's just let them do what they want to do.
Right.
Because, I mean, young kids, I mean, I got a new stepmom when I was 16. I've never called her mom because it's just, I was too old at that point. Yeah,
I think it depends on when they come into the kids' lives, and, you know, and also maybe just some kids prefer, like, I know some now adults, but when they were kids, they called their parents by their first names. They didn't even say mom or dad. They just called them by their first names. And some people prefer that too. And I mean, there's no real.
Don't do that. That's so weird to me. It is weird. But no, you're right. Some people totally do that.
It's just, you know, all what the kids want to do, or what, you know, what's normal in their family.
And if you force the kids not to call them a specific name, or to call them a specific name, then they think there's something wrong. Right. Like, there's something wrong with me calling them, you know,
or there's something wrong with that person. Like, why does mommy hate that person so much? And why do you want to, like, create this rift that doesn't need to be there? Because then the kid's not happy when they're at that house. Right. Like,
and if kid's not happy, then the parents aren't happy, and then that's when things just kind of
fall society starts falling apart.
Right. Exactly.
Well, and it's getting everyone on the same page. Did you guys watch Big Little Lies?
Yes.
I'm not done yet, although I did read the book, so I know what happens. But you know, thinking about, like, that situation where, you know, they had an older daughter together, and there's two moms, and without the communication, things fall apart, and a lot of things can happen because you're more concerned about hating the other person than you are about, like, is your daughter safe and what's happening.
Right. That's a really valid point. Well, I think that's about it for today. If you have questions about blended family mediation, feel free to message us either on YouTube. We have a Facebook page. You can also visit SDFMC.com. Usually have a contact form on there, and you can contact any of us. All right. Well, thank you guys. Have a great day.
Bye. Bye-bye.